Today, we're going to break down one of the most fundamental stories in American history, how civil rights have actually expanded. And, it's not some straight line on a graph, it's really this powerful, ongoing cycle of challenge and response that has totally reshaped the nation. We're going to look at exactly how that cycle works. So, at the very heart of all of this is a major conflict. On one hand, you've got the promise, right? It's baked right into the US Constitution, these guaranteed rights for the people. But then you have the reality, which for a huge chunk of history has been, well, a lot more complicated. That promise just hasn't applied to everyone. And this gap, this space between the ideal and the reality, that's where our story really gets started. So, how do you bridge a gap like that? Well, it happens through a dynamic process that pretty much always kicks off with public pressure. We're talking about people organizing and demanding that the nation actually live up to its own ideals. And in response to that pressure, the US government takes action. We're going to break down how the government has responded by looking at the unique role each of its three branches plays. Okay, let's start with the legislative branch, Congress. Their main power is to create and change the laws of the land. When we're talking about civil rights, this is where the change gets debated, written down, and finally made official, turning those demands from the streets into actual national policy. Now, to get this done, Congress has two main tools in its toolbox. First, there's the heavyweight option, constitutional amendments. This is for the big, fundamental, permanent changes. Think of the 19th Amendment, which finally guaranteed women the right to vote. The second tool is more targeted, passing legislation. These are specific laws built to fix specific injustices, like the landmark Civil Rights and Voting Rights Acts. And wow, the impact of these tools has been massive. They secured the right to vote for women after a fight that lasted for decades. They passed the 24th Amendment to get rid of discriminatory poll taxes, which were explicitly designed to stop African Americans from voting. And they passed these huge civil rights acts that outlawed segregation and discrimination, completely reshaping American society. Every single one of those was a direct legislative answer to a powerful call for justice. But, a law is only as strong as its enforcement, which brings us to the executive branch, the president and their administration. Their job is to take the laws Congress passes and actually put them into action, making sure they're the law of the land in practice, not just on a piece of paper. This is where the law really gets its teeth. For example, when some states were actively fighting against desegregating schools, it was the executive branch that sent in federal troops to enforce the law and protect students. When landlords just ignored open housing laws, it was the executive branch that brought lawsuits against them. These actions are a huge reminder that rights have to be actively defended to mean anything at all. Okay, so Congress writes the laws, and the president enforces them. But what do those laws and the Constitution itself actually mean? That question lands with our third branch, the judiciary. The Supreme Court has this incredibly powerful role of interpreting what our rights and freedoms really are. And for the courts, the key, the magic ingredient for change, often comes down to these words right here, from the 14th Amendment, the Due Process and Equal Protection Clauses. This language, which came about after the Civil War, became one of the most powerful tools for expanding civil rights. It gave the Supreme Court the constitutional muscle to look at state laws and, pretty often, strike them down for being discriminatory. The Supreme Court does this through a legal idea called incorporation. What on earth does that mean? Well, basically, it's the process of using that 14th Amendment to make the federal Bill of Rights apply to the states too. And this was revolutionary. It meant that fundamental rights like freedom of speech or the right to a fair trial were no longer just protections from the federal government. They were protections from state governments as well, creating a single national standard for freedom. So, we've looked at all three branches. Let's zoom back out for a second. What we're seeing here isn't just a random collection of historical events. It's a clear, repeatable pattern that really defines the ongoing story of American civil rights. It really just boils down to this three-step cycle. Step 1, public pressure builds up and demands a change. Step 2, one or more of the government branches responds. They pass a law, they enforce a right, they reinterpret the Constitution. And step 3, as a result, civil rights are officially extended to a group that was denied them before. Understanding this dynamic it's absolutely crucial. It shows us that the definition of we the people has never been set in stone. It has grown and expanded over time, all driven by this constant push and pull between public demand and government action. This process is really at the very center of the story of American governance itself. So I'll leave you with a question to chew on. Using this framework we just walked through, can you think of another group and the specific branch of government that was key to extending their rights? Thinking about it really helps you see that this story isn't just something in our past, it's still unfolding right now.